The fog in Halden Bay never fully lifted. It thinned sometimes, in the hour before noon, enough to see the lighthouse blinking dumbly at a horizon it could no longer reach ships on. That was the hour Eli Navarro liked best, not because the light was good, but because it was the only time the town looked like it was trying. Eli's shop sat on the harbor road between a shuttered bait store and a church nobody attended anymore. The sign above the door had faded to a whisper, Navarro Repairs, radios, clocks, tape. Inside, the walls were lined with the guts of dead machines, cathedral radios with their fabric speakers gone brittle, reel-to-reel decks stacked like coffins, a wall of cassette players nobody under 40 could operate anymore. Eli liked things that had outlived their usefulness and kept working anyway. He understood them. He was 34. He had a quiet face people trusted instantly and regretted trusting slowly, because he gave nothing away. His hands were always faintly stained with flux and grease, his hair perpetually needing a cut, and he moved through his shop with the unhurried certainty of a man who had already decided nothing good was coming, so there was no reason to rush toward it. The house had been left to him, his grandmother's, then his, and with it a locked cedar closet in the back room that he had never fully emptied. That morning, chasing a water leak, he pulled the closet apart board by board and found, behind a false panel his grandmother must have built decades ago, an old built-in answering machine. Not a modern one. A 1990s wall-mounted unit, cream-colored, the kind that used to sit bolted beside a kitchen phone. Its cord had been cut. Someone had hidden it there on purpose. He should have thrown it out. Instead he carried it to his workbench like it might bruise. It took him 4 hours to coax it back to life, new capacitors, a replacement belt cannibalized from a dead cassette deck, a battery bypass soldered in with more patience than the object deserved. When the little red light finally blinked awake, the display read, 3 new messages. The tape inside was original. 30 years old, maybe more. He almost didn't press play. Then he did. Beep. Eli. It's, okay, this is stupid, machines are stupid, but you don't answer your cell and I need you to hear this before you leave for the marina, so. Hi. It's August. The voice cracked slightly on the name, like the speaker knew how strange it was to introduce himself to someone who already knew him completely. Eli's hand found the edge of the workbench. I know what my father said to you. I know what he thinks he can do. I'm not going to let him win this, okay? Just, don't leave town yet. Give me until Friday. I have a plan. I love you. I'm sorry. I love you. Beep. End of message. The second message was static, 40 seconds of harbor wind and someone breathing like they were trying not to cry, and then nothing. The third was a woman's voice, older, brittle, unmistakably grief-worn. This is Marjorie Whitfield. I'm calling for whoever has this number now. My son August passed on the 9th. There won't be a service. Please don't call back. End of messages. Eli sat very still in the workshop light, 30 years old again in his chest even though his hands had 34 years of calluses on them. He had buried August Whitfield when he was 23. There had been no service he was invited to. There had been a small item in the county paper about a capsized boat in a spring storm, a body never fully recovered, and after that there had been nothing, no calls, no letters, no goodbye except the silence itself, which Eli had spent 11 years interpreting as the truest kind of ending there was. He had never known there was a fourth voice, waiting behind a wall, telling him to stay. He played it again. And again. By the 5th time he noticed something he'd missed, a background sound under August's words, a low mechanical hum with a particular rattle in it, one Eli's trained ear knew instantly, because it was sitting 6 feet away from him at that exact moment. It was the sound of this answering machine's own outgoing tape spooling. Which meant this message hadn't been left 30 years ago on some line long disconnected. It had been recorded, and re-recorded, onto this machine, specifically, sometime much more recently, using this exact device's mechanism. Someone had hidden a new message inside an old machine, and hidden that machine in his grandmother's wall. Which meant, impossibly, someone had been in this house recently. And that someone knew August Whitfield's voice well enough to either have recorded him alive, or to have preserved him. The town's only other new business in a decade had opened 3 weeks earlier at the old Whitfield Cannery, a converted warehouse now labeled, in clean gray lettering, Coastal Sound Archive. Eli had seen the trucks come through, watched crates of real decks and shellac records get unloaded by a man he deliberately not looked at twice, because looking at strangers who moved like ghosts from your past was how you ended up losing whole afternoons to grief you'd already paid for. He went there anyway, the cream-colored machine wrapped in a moving blanket in the back of his truck, because he needed someone with proper reel-to-reel dubbing equipment to verify what he suspected, and there was exactly one such person now within 40 miles. The archive smelled like machine oil and dust and the sea. A bell over the door announced him to no one. Then a voice came from behind a row of shelving, unhurried, warm in a way that Eli's whole body recognized before his mind caught up. "Be right with you, just let me get this reel off though." The man who stepped out was tall in the way memory exaggerates and reality corrects, broader through the shoulders than Eli remembered, a beard now where there hadn't been one, gray threading early through dark hair. But the eyes were exactly the same, a pale, changeable hazel that had once made Eli believe, at 22, in the specific and irrational idea of fate. August Whitfield did not drop what he was holding. He simply stopped, entirely, the way a machine stops when its power is cut. Eli. Not a question. Not surprise, exactly. Something closer to a held breath finally being spent. Eli found he had nothing prepared. 11 years of imagined reunions and every one of them evaporated on contact. "You're supposed to be dead," he said, which was not what he meant to lead with, but was, apparently, the truth sitting closest to the surface. August set the reel down with exaggerated care, as if his hands needed the task to keep from doing something else. "I know. Your mother called it. There was a paper. There was a..." Eli's voice caught on the word funeral and he didn't finish it. "There wasn't a funeral," August said quietly. "There was a story. My father paid for the story." The bell over the door still hadn't stopped its faint tremble. Outside, the fog pressed its face to the window like it, too, wanted to hear this. "I found a message," Eli said. "In my grandmother's wall. Your voice. Telling me to wait until Friday." He set the moving blanket down on the counter and folded it back, revealing the cream machine underneath. "It's not 30 years old. The tape's fresh. Someone re-recorded it into this exact machine, recently, and hid it in a house I've lived in my whole life." Something moved behind August's expression, not surprise. Recognition, followed immediately by something that looked almost like fear. "That wasn't me," he said. "I didn't do that. I haven't been inside your grandmother's house since." He stopped himself. "Since when?" August's jaw tightened. "Since the week before I disappeared." They didn't talk that day. August asked for time, not to disappear again, "I promise you that, just to think," and Eli, against every instinct that had kept him upright for a decade, gave it to him. He drove home with the empty machine rattling faintly in the truck bed and did not sleep. For 3 days they orbited each other at a cautious distance, a nod on the harbor road, a coffee bought and left wordlessly on Eli's workbench by a hand that didn't stay to be thanked, a message finally, blessedly, sent by text instead of ghost machinery. "Can we talk properly? My place. Tonight." August's apartment sat above the archive, all bare wood and real shelving and a window that looked straight out at the water where, officially, he had drowned. He made tea neither of them drank. He talked for a long time before he let himself look at Eli directly. "My father found out about us in March," he said. "You remember how he was?" Eli remembered. Warren Whitfield had run the cannery like a small kingdom and God like a family business. A man who had once, at a dinner Eli was foolish enough to attend, described homosexuality as a correctable weakness directly to his son's face while Eli sat 2 feet away, invisible by design. He told me he'd ruin your family's boat lease. Your father's whole livelihood, gone, on a signature, because Warren Whitfield owned half the harbor board back then. He told me if I didn't end it and leave town quietly, he'd make sure everyone knew exactly what kind of son he'd raised, and exactly who'd raised it that way. He wanted a clean story. A tragedy, not a scandal. So he staged your death. He staged a boating accident and paid 3 people to swear I was on that boat. I wasn't. I was already 3 states away by the time it capsized, sent off with new documents and enough money to disappear and never come back, on the condition that I never contact you. He had someone watching to make sure I kept that condition. For years. And the message. Friday. You said you had a plan. August's hands wrapped tighter around his mug. I did have one. I was going to tell you everything and ask you to leave with me before he could act. I left that message the morning he found out I'd tried. He erased my number from every phone in the house before I even got home from the marina. I never knew if it played for you. I assumed it never did, because you never came. It didn't. Not until 4 days ago. Then who? August stopped. His eyes moved to the window, to the water, to something Eli couldn't see. My mother, he said slowly. She kept my old machine after Dad had the house cleared out. She must have. She visited your grandmother sometimes, near the end. They played cards. If she found a copy of the tape in his things after he died last spring, and she wanted you to have it without either of us knowing where it came from. She built a way to give me something he stole, Eli finished, without either of us ever having to ask her for it. They sat with that for a long moment. Outside, a foghorn sounded once, low and patient, the way it had sounded every night of both their childhoods. I looked for you, Eli said finally, quieter now. After the accident story. I drove past your mother's house for a year like an idiot, hoping I'd misread the paper. I looked at this town every single day for 11 years, August said. From wherever I was. I built a whole career out of listening to other people's old voices because I couldn't stand to lose mine to you completely. I told myself it was archiving history. It was never history. It was you. It was always going to be you. The rain had started sometime without either of them noticing, soft against the real shelving window, and in the low amber light of a room full of other people's preserved voices, August reached across the space between them, not fast, not certain, an offering rather than a claim, and Eli let him. It would have been simple, in a film, to let the story end there, 2 men, a rediscovered tape, a rainlit room. But Halden Bay did not let its ghosts go that easily, and neither did Warren Whitfield's estate. 3 weeks later, a letter arrived at the archive from a law office in the city, informing August that as sole surviving heir, several sealed storage units under his father's name had passed to him upon the old man's death, unopened per instruction, contents unknown. August almost didn't go. Eli went with him anyway, because by then going together had quietly become the answer to almost everything. The unit held boxes of harbor board records, a stack of forged documents with August's old name and new name cross-referenced in his father's handwriting like a ledger of a lie, and, at the bottom, a single real canister marked only with a date, the Friday August had promised, the Friday that never came. They played it on August's own restored deck that night, both of them too still to breathe. It was Warren Whitfield's voice, recorded and never sent, apparently meant for no one but the private archive of his own conscience, a man rehearsing, badly, an apology he never delivered in life. I told myself I was protecting the family name. I don't know anymore what that was worth. If either of you ever hear this, I was wrong about the shape love was supposed to take. I don't expect either of you to forgive an old man for stealing 11 years. I only hope you didn't let me steal more than that. August turned the machine off with a hand that wasn't quite steady. He never even sent it, he said. He just kept it. Like proof he'd almost been a different man. Almost doesn't unbuild 11 years, Eli said. No, August agreed. But it's more than I thought I'd ever get. He looked at Eli then, really looked, the way he had 11 years ago across a kitchen table neither of them owned anymore, and something in his face, the fear that had lived there since the bell over the archive door first announced Eli's return, finally, visibly, let go. "I'm not asking you to pretend the 11 years didn't happen," August said. "I know they did. I know I let them. But I'm done being a voice hidden in someone else's wall, Eli. I want to be a person standing in a room you chose to walk into." Eli thought of the closet in the back of his shop, the false panel, the machine that had waited 3 decades to finally say the thing it had always been holding. He thought of how long he had let himself believe silence was the only honest ending love like theirs was allowed. "I already walked in," he said. "I'm still here." They were married the following autumn on the harbor road, in front of the old bait shop that Eli had finally bought and gutted into a proper storefront, under bunting the color of the fog they'd both grown up learning to love despite everything it hid. Marjorie Whitfield sat in the front row in a good coat, dry-eyed and fiercely proud, having never once, in the retelling either man gave afterward, admitted to building the machine that started it, though when Eli thanked her privately, quietly, at the edge of the reception, she only smiled and said, "Some things are better heard than confessed to." The old cream-colored answering machine sits now on a shelf in the shop, restored, unplugged, its 3 messages transferred to a small digital file August keeps on his phone and plays, occasionally, not out of grief anymore but out of a kind of reverence, the way you might keep the ticket stub from the one flight that actually got you where you were always supposed to go. Some nights, when the fog comes in low and the lighthouse blinks its useless, faithful signal at a horizon with nothing left to warn, Eli stands in the doorway of the shop and watches August close up the archive across the harbor road. And thinks about how long a voice can wait in the dark for someone to finally be ready to hear it. Not every message reaches the person it was meant for on the first try. Some of them simply wait. Patient as tide. Certain, in whatever way a recorded voice can be certain of anything, that the right ear would eventually find them, even if it took 11 years, a stranger's kindness, and a wall that finally agreed to give up what it had been keeping safe.